My name is Maya. I am 29 years old, and I live in Riverside, California. And for most of my adult life, I learned how dangerous it is to let people underestimate you, especially family. The meeting was supposed to be about my grandmother's health and the future of the family house. But from the moment I walked into my uncle's living room, I could feel the judgment hanging in the air like smoke that never cleared. Everyone was already seated in a half circle like a panel of judges, coffee cups clutched tightly, expressions practiced. My cousins wore pressed jackets and expensive watches. My aunt sat upright with pearls resting proudly against her collarbone, and my older brother leaned casually against the fireplace, confident in the way only people who have never struggled are. I came straight from a site visit, jeans dusty at the hem, jacket plain and unbranded, and I knew instantly that I'd already lost in their eyes. My aunt cleared her throat and said, "Before we start, we should be realistic about who can actually contribute." That was the opening streak. My cousin chuckled, not even trying to hide it, and added, "Yeah, let's not expect miracles from people who are still figuring life out." No one said my name, but everyone knew. When money entered the conversation, the word finally landed. My uncle folded his arms and said, "We all know Maya isn't in a position to help financially. No offense, some of us have real careers and investments." The rest of the sentence didn't need words. Poor, behind, disposable. They spoke over me, talked about selling the family house, splitting profits, giving my brother decision-making power because he looked responsible. My grandmother's wishes were treated like an inconvenience. I stayed quiet. I watched. I memorized every smirk, every dismissive tone, every time someone said "we" and excluded me. When my cousin joked that I should be happy to receive sentimental leftovers, something settled inside me. Not anger, calm. Because inside my bag, between a notebook and a pen, sat a folder I hadn't planned to open that day. A real estate contract. Signed, legal, final. And as they wrapped up the meeting congratulating themselves, I realized they had just made the most expensive assumption of their lives. The room erupted with questions, demands, confusion. My uncle wanted explanations. My aunt questioned legality. My cousin wanted valuations. I let them talk until the panic burned itself out. Power shifts are always loud at first. "You're saying," my brother said carefully, "that whatever we do with the house affects you?" "I'm saying," I corrected, "that the house is already part of a larger plan you didn't bother asking about." I explained calmly how I acquired the land, how rezoning worked, how selling the house blindly would cost everyone more than they realized. "There are better options," I said, "options that protect Grandma and generate long-term income." My aunt swallowed. "Like what?" "Partnership structures, easements, long-term leases that preserve ownership." My grandmother finally spoke. "Is this true?" she asked softly. I knelt beside her. Every word. She nodded, then looked at the others. "Then you should listen to Maya." Authority shifted instantly. The same people who dismissed me minutes earlier now leaned in carefully. Apologies floated awkwardly through the room, unfinished and uncertain. I didn't need them. Respect had already arrived in the form of ink and signatures. "Here's what happens next," I said. "No sale, independent advisors, decisions that benefit everyone, not just the loudest voices." No one argued. They couldn't. In the weeks that followed, the family dynamic rearranged itself. Messages that once went unanswered now waited for my reply. My uncle asked for advice. My aunt sent articles. My brother avoided me until he finally asked to talk. "I thought success had a look," he admitted. "Turns out it has a process." Construction began quietly. The family house was preserved, integrated into a mixed-use development that honored its history instead of erasing it. My grandmother smiled more. The banks moved faster. City officials remembered my name. Funny how paper changes perception. Standing at the site one afternoon, my grandmother squeezed my hand. "They were wrong about you," she said. I smiled. "They usually are." This wasn't revenge fueled by rage, it was correction, reality asserting itself without raising its voice. If there's one lesson in all of this, it's simple. Being underestimated is not a weakness, it's leverage. Let people call you poor. Let them assume. While they talk, build. While they laugh, learn. And when the moment comes, don't shout. Don't explain. Just place the truth on the table and let silence do the rest. I still wear jeans. I still don't look like their idea of success. The difference is now when I walk into a room, they listen first. And that all started the day my family called me poor, right before I showed them the real estate contract. The real change didn't happen in that living room. That was just the spark. The real shift came weeks later, when my family realized the contract wasn't just paper, it was control. Once lawyers became involved, the tone changed completely. Suddenly, the same relatives who had mocked my jeans were careful with their words. Emails were polite, calls were scheduled. No one laughed anymore. The house that they'd treated like disposable property was now at the center of something much bigger, and for the first time, they weren't holding the steering wheel. What they didn't know was that my leverage didn't stop at land. As due diligence progressed, I uncovered things my family never expected me to see. Unpaid taxes tied to previous renovations, undocumented agreements my uncle had made years earlier, quiet financial shortcuts everyone assumed no one would notice. None of it was illegal enough to destroy them, but it was enough to expose how careless they'd been when they thought no one was watching. And now, I was watching. My uncle tried to regain control by calling a private meeting without me. It backfired. The advisors they hired reported directly to the partnership, and I controlled the majority stake. When he realized that, he called me late one night, his voice tight. "We're family," he said. "Let's not make this complicated." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I simply replied, "I'm keeping it professional. You taught me that." My brother struggled the most. For years, he'd been the golden child, the one they trusted, the one they listened to. Now he was watching people turn toward me for answers. One evening, he admitted the truth he'd never said out loud. "I thought you were playing small because you couldn't do more." I looked at him and said quietly, "No, I was playing long." The project broke ground faster than expected. News spread locally. Articles mentioned my name. Investors reached out. And suddenly, my family wasn't just embarrassed, they were invisible. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, they stood in the background while my grandmother held my hand front and center. That was the moment they understood. Calling me poor had cost them authority, credibility, and control. Not because I punished them, but because I no longer needed their permission to exist at the table. Revenge doesn't always come with shouting or destruction. Sometimes it comes with ownership, and the people who underestimated you have to live the rest of their lives knowing they helped build the silence that defeated them. The fallout came quietly, unfolding piece by piece until those who once laughed found themselves without footing. A compliance audit uncovered my uncle's decade-old shell company siphoning maintenance funds, enough to strip him, legally and irrevocably, of any fiduciary authority once the house entered a regulated corridor. And my aunt followed, losing her voting rights for co-signing documents she'd never understood despite my warnings. There was no drama, just votes and procedure. And then the city approved a naming grant for the final phase of development, and when asked to honor the family, I declined and named it after my grandmother, whose public thanks at the dedication said everything that didn't need saying. Afterward, my brother murmured that I hadn't beaten them, but replaced them, and I corrected him. I'd outgrown them. And now, at holidays, they're careful and respectful, listening in the hush that follows my name, because the girl they once called poor now owns the silence, and that irrelevance is the most permanent revenge of all.